I feel like it's this chapter is like a heart to heart with oneself. So we're really understanding a lot of these terms, and I feel that it's so easy for it to feel like it's just like out there. It's like a rainbow, you can't catch it, you know? But I feel that a person might ask themselves, you know, why don't I feel motivated to love God? And the Alter Rebbe gives one the ability to awaken the love within him by saying, look what God did for you when he took you out of Egypt. And we always go back to Egypt. We always go back to that and say, well, that was so long ago, you know? I mean, God did a lot of things after Egypt, but especially in the davening, it's just like this great point that even if you go to other points, it's this point that, you know, it's just good. It's a good place to absolutely start and absolutely bring out a point, because you're looking at Egypt. The people were so low. They were so broken. And they're thinking, it's never going to happen. We're never going to be redeemed. We were told we were going to be redeemed, but it doesn't look like it. And here all of a sudden we get to the point where they of course were redeemed. They were in the desert, you know, in a way where God was like as if they were a brand new baby, and eventually they go to the land. So it's this great success story. Even if we're not bringing another one, it's a great point to at least realize, well, God did so much for me. I want to reciprocate that love. And that's really the idea of this chapter. It's like when we're praying, we're reminding ourselves that God really does so much. There is all these little miracles that go on throughout our day, and I've just seen so many miracles. You know, it was just really incredible, beautiful miracles that I have seen, especially when we open our eyes to it. So Hashem made this method where, you know, he could, you know, express himself in the physical world. So he has to like limit himself so much that we're like wondering, is that God, or is that just, you know, our imagination? And sometimes we ask ourselves this. And like I was, that, you know, I got called to jury duty, and then each week it had to be pushed off, actually, because of Rosh Hashanah, then Yom Kippur, then Sukkot, and then Simchas Torah. And I'm like thinking, maybe they forgot about me. Nope. I'm like, okay, you know, it's, you know, you have to serve, and I feel like you have to judge people. And for me, it feels like a big deal because, you know, if whoever you're dealing with, that person could buy your word, you know, it's not a fun job. And so I called up and it was completely canceled. And I was really surprised because it was the first time it was ever canceled for me. Usually I go in and they have to ask you a million questions. And it was like the first time where it came up the idea of, you know, going away to this kinnis. And I'm like, well, it's not a COVID year. You know, I feel like we could actually go on the planes and hopefully everything will be normal. And I'm like, I really just want to go. And I mean, I have no idea how it's going to work. We had to have like 4 people, you know, around the clock helping. Even with my mother-in-law, we just needed all these helpers, you know. Everyone just said yes. They all wanted to help. It was incredible. And so I really believe that was a gift from Hashem, that everything is divine providence. Perhaps if I would have went the Rosh Hashanah week, perhaps that week, you know, it would have been, maybe I would have to be called to some long case or whatever it was. But, you know, Hashem really does help. And I found it really, you know, just little details, like making sure we got the right bus. It sounds like hilarious, these little things. The person, what's the big deal? But it matters. And you realize that God is watching over you, and you're opening your eyes up to it. And it's a beautiful point. So Hashem is making this, you know, God is this pure, undefined, you know, uniqueness, right? He's this ultimate oneness. This is God. He's incredible. But he's like this unflavored, you know, there's nothing that's going to make him, no turning God in any way. But yet Hashem wants a relationship. So he's coming down here. Every single person, not just a relationship for the group. We can say that, okay, that's the minyan idea, that's the group idea. But it's so much more than that. It's also that he wants a specific relationship, connection with each one of us. And the Jewish people is not just the Jewish people. It's also the whole world. Every person counts. Every person is special, especially if you're looking at, this week's Parsha and the whole story with Light. And you realize, why is Light saved even though he doesn't deserve to be saved? It's because of Abraham. So everything has a circumstance. Everything has a relationship. And that's in this special, unique relationship between each person is really shown, I feel like, in this, when you're looking at this week's Parsha. So, especially in the Tanya, it brings out this concept that when a person, especially, they're looking for prayer, it's so easy to just rattle it off and just say, okay, I said all the words I'm supposed to say, whether it's Hebrew or English. Am I done? That's what we think sometimes, because we're just like, it could seem long and tedious and hard, and I don't know if I'm on that level or feel that way. When we're taking a moment to realize God is making such an effort to connect to us at this very moment, he's setting aside time for us, because that's what prayer is. Everything is stopping because he wants that relationship with you. It's not so simple. It's not so easy to say no, because it's this idea of cause and effect. When you have, there can't be too much electricity, or if it's plugged in wrong, it's not going to go well. So if the chandelier is too wired up, it's a problem. And so that also happens when it comes to how Hashem created the world. And it goes to the idea of cause and effect, that everything has a reaction, and how Hashem set things up. But there's also a reaction from us, not just with Hashem, but with everyone who we bump into. And we have to approach and a connection to people, and people that we're having this gentleness with. And I was telling you that story, that very beautiful story, that it was a 3-part story. And finally she was free at last. And the rabbi told me that somehow he felt about how I normally don't keep in contact with a person I met for 5 seconds. And it was like a Shabbos, just a Shabbos, a 5-second, But I couldn't have any peace. I couldn't have any rest to let her be alone in Israel with her thoughts, wanting to come back here to be with her almost murderer husband. And it gave me no rest. I had to have a connection. Until even now, when the whole thing's over with, I still, of course, just chose that I would definitely want to have a connection, a relationship, because she, of course, is a congregant. Even if back then she was a 5-second congregant, she's a person, she deserves to have a relationship, with her Rebbetzin. And so for me, it's just such a beautiful point that Hashem wants this connection with us. And even if we feel, well, I'm not up to that level today, I don't know if I was good as yesterday, whatever it is, that could take our mind, our thoughts, and we're thinking about, especially women, we're thinking, do we really deserve such attention from God, But obviously, it is a special relationship, and he understands what each one of us needs. Sometimes I say to him, God, you made me. I'm not embarrassed in front of you. You could be embarrassed. But you say, God, you created me. You know all the faults that I have, So especially when we're all this way, but it helps us when we're thinking about Hashem and connection and what does he want, and giving to other people and giving tzedakah, charity, in many different ways. So it's just something really beautiful that I feel Tanya is bringing out, the idea of divine providence in our life, divine providence in every moment that we have, that there is a huge difference between us and God, and Hashem is choosing to basically put himself in a tiny little box, in order, toddler's, playing under the table with some toys. I'm like, okay, I'll sit under the table with you. Like, you just try to appease the toddler. And I feel that's what Hashem is doing. Of course, we have to understand what he's doing. So it's our concept of what we feel, to put Hashem in human terms, it's only allegorically speaking, of course, and not for real. And it's something that's hard for us to fathom because we appreciate those human terms. It makes us so close, and we feel so close with God when we feel like, oh, God has a heart, No, God doesn't have a heart like we have a heart, but we have to think of it in these terms. So there is filters and contractions in the world in order for us to feel that God is there. And it talks about this famous teaching that when they went to the orchards, they talk about, Gan Eden, there was 4 people that went, a group. One died, one lost his mind, one lost his faith. And Rabbi Akiva was the only one that came out alive and in peace. And he explains that when he walked in there, he wasn't looking for anything. He was looking for peace. So he came out with peace. And so that's the idea that Talmud Chagiga brings out, that, there's so many different ways in how we're supposed to approach with Hashem, of course. But we saw with Rabbi Akiva, his very simple approach is really what really works for the I guess you could say the regular person. So even though Hashem is so powerful, he's so incredible, Rabbi Isaac Luria makes a note about this idea that in order for us to be able to have some concept of grasping Hashem, we need to have the idea of Simsim in the world. And that's the idea of, let's say you have like this really bright lamp and you want to go to sleep. And you're like, I got to somehow cover that lamp, which I tell my kids, don't do that. But you got to cover the lamp. And so they're covering it with this like almost like this darkened sheet. And it's not just a darkened sheet, it's also like a thicker sheet, that it makes the light so much lower in intensity that you're able to actually what appears to be a dark room. And so this is the idea of Simpson, that the world is like this physicality of the world that we also see in order to, that we don't just see God and go, God, it's like whatever you say, it's like all of a sudden, maybe you can say now it's the King of England is coming, that he's coming, but it's just in your mind. But could you imagine if he walked into your house, your feeling of, wow, it just blows the mind, rather than you might know he's coming, or you're thinking about it, you don't know. It's just a whole different place where you are. And so if God is standing right before you, it's very different to say, today, do you want to go do a mitzvah? The king is here. Of course I'm doing a mitzvah. There's no free choice. There's no choice. You're just going to get up and do. But when it's your own choice, or you feel it's your own choice in your own mind because there's no king standing in front of you, and you feel that this is something that you want to do, and you want to do this good thing today, and there's no one standing over you, forcing you to do it, even though if God was right there and you could physically see him, of course there's no choice, you would do it. And so that's really what it explains. Rabbi Isaac Luria, he explains the whole idea of Simsim and how that's really what God wanted. He wanted us to feel that we have a free choice, that we have a say in our life, that we should feel that we're our own identity. The whole idea, a word of identity is not a real word, because really we're all God's creation. We're all part of God himself. What identity? There is no identity when it comes to God. The reality is that's the reality. But in order for us to feel that we are our own person, that we are unique, that we are a something coming to share and partner with God, we have to feel that we have our own identity. And so that's really the idea of what Rabbi Isaac Luria is mentioning.